I'm basically just going on with my life. You
Hello everyone, this is Nancy Drew, and this episode is about Burke Did It, and there's no secret about it. And it starts off with Burke kind of explaining how he did it, and then it goes into the pineapple, and then it goes into the Swiss Army knife, and then it mentions the shoe prints found in the wine cellar in the basement. And then it talks about the golf incident where JonBenet was hit with a golf club by Burke. And then it ends with a retelling of the what most likely happened that night. And then it ends with something secret. You mean when she got killed? I know what happened. I think that someone took her very quietly and tiptoed down the basement. And then maybe took a knife out. Hit her in the head, maybe. Or maybe a hammer. It's a bowl of something. Oh? Looks like glass with a tea bag in it. Does that look like cereal inside there? No, it looks a little big. One piece right there. For cereal. Maybe like fruit, but there wouldn't be a spoon in it, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. The fresh pineapple in her stomach. The autopsy report showed that there was just a little bit of fluid or gunk in her stomach, that her stomach was basically empty. And in her digestive tract, in the duodenum, there was what appeared to be pineapple. And according to test results, it was fresh pineapple. Damn it, the fresh pineapple in her stomach. I believe what happened was when the Ramsey family returned home from Fleet White's house, Burke, unbeknownst to his family, got out the pineapple and the tea. And you can see in this photograph, photo 78, that there's a container there. And I believe that container held water, cold water from the fridge. And Burke was setting this up for himself. And JonBenet had a few pieces of the pineapple, and Burke drank some tea. There were 2 white nylon pieces of cord. There was this one, which was about 2 feet long. And you can see that loop there. That was the loop that was around JonBenet's right wrist. And then that one section there was 5.5 inches long. And then the other section going to the other loop was 15.5 inches in length. and you can see that both ends are frayed from some kind of cut. Now the second piece of nylon cord was the one that was tied to the broken paintbrush handle. And you can't see the end of that piece, of that section. And it measures from the paintbrush handle to the other loop, 17 inches. And then there's the loop that has JonBenet's hair in it. And the knot that's on the paintbrush handle is a little bit like this knot here, a hitch knot, where it's wrapped around and then it goes to the left side of the handle, and then it goes over to the right side of the handle and is wrapped around several times, and then it goes in amongst itself and back out. And therefore when it's pulled on, it gets tighter on the paintbrush handle. Now, one significant point about Burke's Swiss Army knife is that housekeeper Linda Hoffman hid it from Burke because he kept whittling away on wood and leaving little pieces on the floor. And so it states here, after Thanksgiving, I took that knife away from him and hid it in the cupboard just outside JonBenet's room. That's how that problem was solved. And the significance here is that obviously Burke found it. And I mean, it wasn't hidden in a very good place if it was in a cupboard outside JonBenet's room. And that it was taken away after Thanksgiving. So there was only a short period of time that the knife was out, and Burke had it at that time. And then the knife was found near JonBenet's dead body, and so it easily could have been used to cut the white nylon cord. And here's the search warrant, and it shows the red Swiss Army knife. This is what John Ramsey believed before he learned that the police had identified the footprint in the wine cellar belonged to Burke Ramsey. In the basement room where I found JonBenet, a fungus-like mildew grew on the floors and walls due to the moist climate of the room. This room had no windows and was concrete on 4 sides and on the ceiling. Next to JonBenet's body, the killer, I believe, left a clear footprint made by the sole of a high-tech hiking shoe from the area at the heel where the brand name was stamped. The markings are clear and should further help identify the killer. Burke on the Dr. Phil show. There was a footprint in the mold on the ground of the basement, and the investigators thought it was from a hiking boot. Yeah. Did you own any hiking boots that you might have worn in the basement at some time? Yeah, I did. I don't remember the brand, but I remember that it had a little compass on the shoelace. Here's a photograph of that footprint in the mold in the basement in the wine cellar. And with the magic of computers, I will flip it around and you can see it says high tech, which is a kind of boot. Now, according to Patsy, when they were up at the house in Charlevoix, Michigan, Burke hit JonBenet in the eye with a golf club, and she took JonBenet to the emergency room. And according to the book Perfect Murder, Perfect Town, Patsy's friend said, I think Burke had a bad temper. It's like he had a chip on his shoulder. He had hit JonBenet Before the murder, I would have to say it was probably a year and a half. They were playing in the yard, and apparently he hit her with the golf club, right here. She says the kids were playing. Burke lost his temper, and he hit her with the golf club. Now, there's two theories about what happened. The first is that Burke killed JonBenet by striking her on the head and strangling her with the garrote, and her parents, either John or Patsy, found JonBenet, and they confronted Burke, and Burke was there, and then they sent him to bed and covered up what happened. And the second theory is similar, but that Burke killed his sister in secret that night, and then he went to bed, and then John or Patsy or both of them found JonBenet the way she was found, and they knew Burke did it, but Burke wasn't around, and they didn't go wake up Burke. They just covered up the crime because they knew Burke did it. Now, I propose that Burke was playing dumb when he asked these questions of John Ramsey, and he knew the answer to them, but he wanted to hear what his father said. And so the first is, John says, "We weren't speaking to you," and Burke replies, "But what did you find?" So he wasn't there when Patsy or John found JonBenet. And then he asked the question again. "Well, I asked my dad, where did you find the body?" So again, Burke was playing dumb. And then he told the psychologist, "My dad said I found it down in the basement." So here's the last known photograph of JonBenet over at Fleet and Priscilla White's house. And so going from here, they dropped off those gifts and they returned home to their house. And I say the four of them did different things. I think Patsy went upstairs to the second floor and was packing and arranging stuff for the trip. And JonBenet wasn't taken to her bed, but was on the first floor doing something. And you can see her bed, and nothing had been moved since that morning. And then Burke at some point went and got out the bowl of pineapple and the glass of tea. And then JonBenet took a piece of the pineapple and ate it. And then I believe some time went by. And then Burke got his Swiss Army knife and led JonBenet downstairs. And he was playing around, and he tied her up with the nylon cord. And he eventually hit her in the head with a hammer or something similar to a hammer. And then he got scared, might have poked her with his train track to see why she wasn't alive, and then went upstairs and got in bed. And then later, John or Patsy found JonBenet, possibly when Patsy was finished packing and went looking for JonBenet and couldn't find her, and then eventually went down to the basement and to her horror found JonBenet tied up and unconscious. I probably do, but I don't really remember them. And if I did remember any, I don't think I would tell you. Why not? I'm a good person to tell secrets to. Because they're secrets. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved. And do you think Burke was there when Patsy or John found JonBenet's dead body? Leave a comment, and I'll see you next weekend.